Welcome to EPG Pathshala. In this module, we shall learn about typology of peasant movements. Introduction. Historically, a wide variety of peasant movements have characterized the Indian landscape. Some of these movements have witnessed mass violence, whereas some others have been a part of general mobilization characteristic of the Indian national movement. There has also been differential participation of different agrarian classes, scale of their mobilization, the levels of political awareness, strategies, and goals and objectives. Though most movements have been localized phenomena, the resonance of peasant discontent and the general cause of their misery have found articulation in the nationalist agenda and the development policies after independence. The plethora of the legislative measures to achieve land reforms can very well be seen as the political response to popular upsurge of the peasants exemplified in the various movements. Apart from the studies of particular peasant movements, some of the scholars have also developed strategies to make sense of the wide variety of peasant movements by developing typologies of different kinds. This module intends to introduce to you some of these typologies. So let's begin by looking at the need for a typology. A typology is an attempt at structuring social reality and perceiving it through categories in order to achieve a clear and precise understanding. In an essay by Durkheim and Mars, published in 1903, it was suggested that there is a need for sociology to develop a branch of study called social morphology, whose primary role would be to develop systematic classifications of social types or species in relation to social structure. According to these theorists, types are more than just logical categories. They are effective collective symbols of classification. Sociology must also be concerned with natural typologies, that is, the symbolic classification of entities into types or folk classification that are found in various societies as they reflect the conditions of the human subjects themselves. Typologies thus occupy a very important place in conceptual understanding that they bring a certain order within empirical science. According to the International Encyclopedia of Social Sciences, the methodological function and the significance of typological classification are basically twofold, namely codification and prediction. A typology goes beyond sheer description by simplifying the ordering of the elements of a population and the non relevant traits of the population into distinct groups. In this capacity, a typological classification creates order out of potential chaos of the discrete, discontinuous, and heterogeneous observation. But in so codifying phenomena, it also permits the observer to seek and predict relationships between phenomena that do not seem to be connected in any obvious way. In other words, with the potential for codification, prediction, and precision, typology enables the making of a more scientific social science. So, keeping in view these uses, it is worthwhile to know about typologies. Social movements, the basis of a typology. A preliminary way of understanding peasant movements is thus to look at them in terms of social movements. So before we learn about peasant movements, let's know about typologies of social movements. In general, movements may be classified according to their locus or the segments of population, sector, or setting in which they originate. Accordingly, we have movements which are classified as linguistic, religious, sectarian, caste, peasant, worker, tribal, etc. This criteria thus enables us to understand the section of the society which is involved in the movement. Movements may also be classified on the basis of their scale and spread. Accordingly, they may be all India, regional, or local. However, according to Rao, the criteria of ideology and the nature of consequences are critical in defining the nature and scope of the movement. We come across another form of classification on the basis of change orientation of the social movement as suggested by Partha and Mukherjee in his study of Naxalbari movement. He says that social changes can be understood as changes occurring within the given structure, changes occurring from an emergence of an additional structure, changes occurring due to the elimination or loss of a structure, and changes occurring as a result of replacement of existing structure by an alternative structure. Following the above, changes of the first variety could be classified as accumulative. Those of the second and third variety are alternative, while changes of the fourth type are transformative. Likewise, T.K. Oman, on the basis of a study of the Bhudan Gramdan movement, puts forth a threefold classification of movements: charismatic, organizational, and ideological. In his classification, the emphasis is on the prime mover of the movement, that is, what propels and sustains a movement and mobilizes the rank and file. For example, given the charismatic role of Vinoba, the Bhudan could well be regarded as a charismatic movement. Naxal movement, on the other hand, will be an example of ideological movement, and peasant movements launched under All India Kisan Sabha would be a case of organizational movement. Typology of peasant movements. Scholars who have studied peasant movements in India have classified the phenomena along several axes. According to Ghanshyam Shah, classification on the basis of chronological emergence in different periods of history has been quite popular. Therefore, we often refer to peasant movements by the rough historical period, such as peasant movements in the pre-British India, peasant movements in the colonial period, and peasant movements in the post-independence India. Peasant movements in the post-independence period, again, have been classified as pre-Naxal Bari and post-Naxal Bari, or pre-Green Revolution or post-Green Revolution. Movements occurring in the post-Green Revolution period have been termed as farmers' movements. This replacement of the peasant by the farmer, however, is not an arbitrary choice on the part of scholars. There is an abundance of literature to justify the conceptual shift in the terminology. In the characterization of a movement as a farmers' movement, a set of larger theoretical issues are at stake, such as the nature of agrarian capitalism, the place of free or unfree labor, the role of Indian state and its dispositions towards the agrarian bourgeoisie. Interestingly, Gail Omvet has classified the peasant struggles into old and new, whereby the former is known as peasant movements and the latter as farmers' movements. Farmers' movements have certain distinguishing features. These movements generally display utter indifference to the plight of the laboring classes. Issues relating to the general well-being of the landless agricultural laborers hardly find any place in their agenda. In fact, it is the ownership of the land that qualifies one to the status of a farmer. Moreover, the sectional demands of the class of the owner cultivators turn out to be the general demands of the entire rural population. This gives the impression of farmers constituting a homogeneous class and thereby underplays the internal differentiation of the class of farmers in terms of caste and the differential access to land. The focus is generally on the access to the resources provided by the state, such as subsidies on power for irrigation, fertilizers, and agricultural implements like tractors, etc. In India, the Shetkari Sangatna movement in Maharashtra, led by Sharad Joshi, and the Bharatiya Kisan Union movement, led by Mahendra Singh Tikait in the western Uttar Pradesh, are seen as the textbook cases of the farmers' movements. Scholars have also looked at Karnataka Rajya Raita Sangha movement led by Professor M.D. Nanjundaswamy. Most of these movements testify to the increasing country-town nexus and the growing hold of the capitalist relations in the Indian agriculture. On one hand, the dependence on market makes them prosper as the agriculture becomes a lucrative economic enterprise. On the other hand, it also makes them extremely vulnerable by exposing them to the global dynamics of the agriculture commodity production, particularly cash crops. The incidence of farmers' suicide, the phenomena of BT cotton or Monsanto have to be understood in the relation to the increasing reach and depth of capitalism in the Indian agriculture. In his study of peasant struggles, A.R. Desai classified colonial India into Raitwari areas under British territory, Zamindari areas under princely territories, and tribal areas. He called the struggles in the colonial period as peasant struggles and those in the post-independent period as agrarian struggles. The usage of term agrarian struggles is to indicate a broad category consisting of peasants and other classes in these struggles. Kathleen Gough recorded and classified revolts launched by tribals who cultivated land. The classification is based on their goals, ideology, and the method of organization. According to her, there are 5 types of revolts that you may see on the screen. Restorative rebellions, religious movements, social banditry, terrorist vengeance, mass insurrections. Inspired by the framework of class analysis, D.N. Dhanagare believes that the peasant movement in India can be understood through models of agrarian classes. He draws upon and extends the Marxist tradition of the study of peasantry in terms of agrarian classes. According to him, the studies of peasantry needs to be both historical and comparative in nature. He used this framework to analyze a range of peasant movements in India between 1920 to 1950, such as the Mopla Rebellion in Malabar, the Tebaga movement in Bengal, Bardoli Satyagraha in Gujarat, and the peasant struggles of Telangana, etc. Privileging goals, ideology, and methods of organization in his classification of peasant movements, Dhanagare talks of the following 6 types: nativistic movements or rebellions, religious or millenarian movements, social banditry, mass insurrections, terrorism, and liberal reformist movements. The first 2 types of the above mentioned classifications are transformative as they aim at the total change, while the last 4 basically refer to the reformative partial changes, intra-systemic changes, and the modifications in the existing social relations. In recent times, the scholars also include the struggles of agricultural labor under the general rubric of peasant movements. After all, agrarian labor as a category is intimately linked with the general framework of the ownership, control, and the use of land. Thus, K.P. Kannan divides the rural labor struggles according to the development of class consciousness among them. Therefore, there are protest movements, secular movements, and nationalist movements. Another way of looking at peasant movements is the way Ranajit Guha does in his book Elementary Aspects of Peasant Insurgency in Colonial India, where he examines the peasant insurgency from the perspective of peasant consciousness for revolt. Gough delineates the underlying structural features of tribal consciousness among them, namely negation, solidarity, transmission, territoriality, etc. These features can enable us to understand why and how peasants have rebelled in the past. However, Gough represents a more recent trend where scholars are moving away from the typologies. He believes that peasant struggles cannot be categorized because they have an element of arbitrariness. Social reality is complex and it is misleading to divide them artificially. However, Gough's study is confined to tribal rebels and to the rebellions that had occurred during the colonial period. Some of Gough's collaborators, namely Gyanendra Pandey and Shahid Amin, though have worked on other peasant movements in considerable detail. Collectively, these works get designated as subaltern historiography. The limits of typology. Although sociologists have devoted a lot of time to the creation of typologies, there are several limits that typologizing imposes on our understanding of social reality. Firstly, as mentioned earlier, the urge to create typologies that would enable generalization and prediction is a little far-fetched. Because social reality appears to be more dynamic to be encapsulated within such typologies. Secondly, some movements have participants from different strata of society. For example, if the issue of conservation of forests is raised by the tribals, should the movement be treated as a tribal movement or ecological movement? They can be regarded as both, as sustenance of forests is important for the livelihood of tribals. Issues like ecology or civil liberties are not class-based movements, though they might affect some class of people more than the others. This tells us about the limitation of typologies to comprehend the complex social reality. In fact, M.S.A. Rao provides a balanced understanding of act and purpose of classification when he rightly emphasizes that while classification helps to identify the main features of the movement, it does not fully explain its origin, growth, dynamics, and consequences. Any classification is bound to remain inadequate as a movement tends to acquire new features during its course, and any classification can only be relative to a particular phase in its development. In brief, this module has hopefully offered you a preliminary understanding of the different types of peasant movements in India. It has also sensitized you to a larger issues of development of capitalism in agriculture, the role of the state and the differentiated interests of the peasantry. At the same time, it has introduced you to some of the scholars who have worked on these issues. To summarize in brief, typologies are a good way of making sense of voluminous literature that exists on varied peasant movements by equipping us with conceptual distinctions along different axes. Thank you.